They call it logistics. I call it babysitting. 3,900 tons of steel, rubber, and human lives moving at 55 miles per hour across the continental United States. My name is Peter Brooks. For 28 years, I have been the invisible glue holding valiant freight systems together. You probably do not know my face, but if you bought a toaster in the Midwest, an avocado in February, or a generator after a hurricane, I am the exact reason it arrived on time. I am the contract renewal manager, which is corporate speak for the man who knows where the bodies are buried and has the shovel in his trunk. I do not have a corner office with a view of the skyline. I have a cubicle that smells like stale coffee and printer toner buried deep in the operational bowels of the building, and I like it that way. The quiet allows me to hear the hum of the machine. I know when a port strike in Long Beach is going to screw up a delivery in Omaha 3 days before the union boss even decides to pick up a picket sign. I know which trucking consortiums are padding their mileage and which ones will drive through a blizzard because they owe me a favor from the year 2012. But let us get one thing straight before I tell you how I froze this place. I did not want to be a hero. I just wanted to do my job. The problem started, as it always does, with a departure. Old man Walter Hamilton, the founder, retired to a vineyard in Tuscany that probably cost more than the gross domestic product of a small island nation. He was 78 years old, tough as leather, but he was a businessman who knew the price of diesel. We respected each other. We had an understanding. I kept his trucks moving, and he kept the checks clearing. Then came Justin Hamilton, 36 years old, with an elite business degree his father paid for a library wing to get him into. He walked into the executive suite wearing a suit that cost more than my vehicle, smelling of sandalwood and unearned confidence. He did not know a pallet jack from a potato sack, but suddenly he was the captain of the ship. His third week, he installed a combat tap in the break room. His fourth week, he fired the entire janitorial staff to outsource for efficiency, which meant the toilets backed up within 48 hours. At month 5, he was walking around the office floor with a woman named Tiffany, who was apparently our new director of vibes or operations liaison, or whatever title you give your side piece to get her on the corporate payroll. I kept my head down. I am a professional. I have survived 3 recessions, a global pandemic, and a cyber attack that required me to route trucks using a paper map and a payphone. I could survive Justin, or so I thought. The friction was not immediate. It was a slow grind like sand in a gearbox. Justin did not like me. I was legacy. I was analog. I was a 48-year-old man in a flannel shirt who preferred to pick up the phone and speak to people directly until the job got done. To him, I was a relic. To me, he was a hood ornament on a transport truck, shiny, fragile, and completely useless when you hit a deer. I remember the day the dynamic shifted. It was a Tuesday. I was deep in the weeds, renegotiating a massive contract with the Gulf Coast Shipping Union. These guys are tough. They eat nails for breakfast and negotiate with baseball bats. I had been on the phone with their rep, Big Joe, for 4 hours, massaging a 3% rate hike into a deal that would keep our shipping lanes open for another 7 years. Justin breezed by my desk, Tiffany trailing behind him. "Peter," he said, not stopping, just tossing the words over his shoulder like a gum wrapper. "We need to talk about your desk. It is cluttered. Bad optics for investors." My desk was covered in bills of lading, manifests, and legal pads covered in my handwriting. It was the nervous system of the company. "I am in the middle of the Gulf Coast renewal, Justin," I said, covering the receiver. "If I clean my desk, you lose New Orleans." He stopped. He turned around, giving me that pitying smile people give to confused elderly relatives. "We have software for that now, Peter. Move it to the cloud and seriously lose the paper. It is the year 2028. He walked away. Tiffany giggled. Big Joe was still on the line. "Everything all right, Pete?" "Fine, Joe," I said, lighting a mental cigarette because I quit the real ones 10 years ago. And God, did I miss them. Just a minor glitch in the matrix. Now, about that overtime clause. I saved the deal. I saved the Gulf Coast lane. The company made $52 million on that contract alone over the next quarter. Did I get a thank you? No. I got an email from Human Resources about the clean desk policy. But the breaking point was not work. It never is. It is always the personal disrespect that lights the fuse. It was mid-October, and peak season was ramping up with terrifying intensity. Halloween candy, Thanksgiving turkeys, Christmas imports. Everything was moving at once. I was working 15-hour days, fueled by ibuprofen, stale coffee, and pure spite. Then the email landed in my inbox. The subject read, "Mandatory attendance celebrating visionary leadership." It was an invitation to Justin's birthday party. The text invited us to join them this Saturday at the Hamilton Estate for a night of innovation, celebration, and cocktails. As we honored our CEO, Justin Hamilton, on his 36th trip around the sun, the email explicitly noted that attendance was mandatory for all senior staff members. Saturday was the busiest Saturday of the entire month. It was the day the massive Asian imports hit the West Coast ports. It was the day I had to personally oversee the customs for a massive shipment of temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals that, if delayed by even a few hours, would spoil and cost us millions of dollars in insurance claims. These were not just standard goods, they were life-saving medications destined for regional clinics across the Northeast. If the refrigeration failed or the paperwork stalled, the carrier would be forced to destroy the entire batch. I had negotiated the specialized carrier protocols myself, knowing the exact thermal tolerances of the cargo. I looked at the invitation. It was printed on heavy cardstock embossed with gold foil, probably costing more than my weekly grocery budget. I hit reply. "Justin, happy early birthday," I wrote. "Unfortunately, I cannot attend. I have the critical pharmaceutical logistics clearance scheduled for Saturday night. It requires live monitoring due to the temperature-sensitive nature of the cargo. Have a drink for me. Regards, Peter." I thought that was the end of it. It was professional, polite, and entirely reasonable. I was wrong. The next morning, the office atmosphere felt completely different. You know that heavy feeling when the barometric pressure drops right before a tornado touches down? The air was thick, the phones were too quiet, and people were looking at me and then looking away. I sat down at my desk, booted up my ancient desktop, and took a sip of lukewarm coffee. My login failed. "Access denied," the screen read. That is strange, I thought. I typed the password again. "Access denied." I was reaching for the phone to call technical support when I heard the click-clack of heels and the squeak of expensive leather loafers. "Peter," Justin's voice boomed across the floor. He was not smiling today. I spun my chair around. There he was, flanked by Tiffany, who was holding a clipboard, and two security guards who looked like they would rather be anywhere else in the world. "Is the server down?" I asked, though deep in my gut, right where the ulcer was starting to form, I already knew the answer. "We are making some changes, Peter," Justin said, smoothing his tie. It was a silk knit, bright red, a power tie for a man with no actual power. "We are pivoting to a more agile leadership structure. Your refusal to integrate with the team culture," he paused, referencing the party invitation without saying it out loud, "was the final straw. You are not a team player." I stared at him. The silence stretched out between us, tight as a rubber band. "You are firing me," I stated flatly, "because I am working this Saturday to save our cargo instead of watching you drink overpriced vodka." "It is about culture fit," Tiffany chimed in, her voice high and nasal. "We need people who vibrate on our frequency." She adjusted her designer glasses, looking at her clipboard as if she were inspecting a piece of dirt on the office floor. "We are building a modern, forward-thinking environment here, Peter, and your stubborn adherence to old-fashioned methods is holding us back. We need team players who understand the vision of our new leadership." I looked at Tiffany. I looked at Justin. I looked at the security guards. "Justin," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I manage the contracts for 3,000 vendors. I am the authorized signatory for the Port of Los Angeles, the Teamsters Local 4004, and the Cross-Border Customs Alliance. If I leave today, those relationships do not just automatically transfer to the cloud." Justin laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "Everyone is replaceable, Peter. That is business 101. Now hand over your badge. Security will escort you out." I looked at my desk, the piles of paper, the sticky notes, the small framed photo of my golden retriever, Cooper. I stood up. I did not scream, I did not cry, and I did not flip the table. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my plastic identification badge, and dropped it into Justin's outstretched hand. "Okay," I said. Justin looked disappointed. He wanted a scene. He wanted me to beg. He wanted to feel like the big man crushing a rebellion. Tell your dad I said good luck, I added. My dad is in Europe. Justin sneered. He does not care about the help. He will, I said. I grabbed my bag, picked up the picture of Cooper, and walked out. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the side of Justin's smug face, I checked my watch. It was 9:14 in the morning. By 9:30, the first truck would be hitting the way station in Toledo, and by 9:45, the entire Valiant Freight Systems network was going to start realizing that the heart had just been ripped out of the body. I was not just the help. I was the kill switch, and Justin had just triggered me. The air outside the office building smelled of exhaust and wet pavement. It was a gray morning, the kind that seeps into your bones, but for the first time in 28 years, I did not feel the chill. I felt incredibly light. I walked across the parking lot to my 2018 Ford Explorer. It had a dent in the rear bumper from a loading dock accident I supervised 4 years ago. I tossed my bag and the picture of Cooper onto the passenger seat, but I did not start the car immediately. Instead, I sat there listening to the rain tap against the windshield. Most people, when they get fired after nearly 3 decades of service, they panic. They worry about the mortgage, health insurance, and their identity. And sure, a part of me was doing that math. I am a single man in my late 40s. The job market is not exactly begging for people who know how to manually reconcile a customs manifest from the year 2012. But another part of me, the part that had dealt with angry truckers, corrupt port officials, and hysterical clients, was already moving into crisis management mode. Except this time, I was not managing the crisis for Valiant. I was the crisis. I pulled out my phone. It was my personal cell, thank God. I have always kept a strict firewall between my personal life and the company property. I opened my personal email application, my Gmail address that I had given to every major vendor, every union boss, and every port authority director over the last 2 decades. Not for official business, but for emergencies. Call me here if the building burns down, I used to tell them. Well, I had struck the match, and now it was time to watch it burn. I did not send a mass email. That is amateur hour, and it looks like sabotage. I needed to be compliant. Maliciously, beautifully compliant. I typed out a draft. The subject read, "Notice of change in authorized representation. To whom it may concern," I wrote. "Effective immediately, I, Peter Brooks, am no longer employed by Valiant Freight Systems. As such, I am no longer the authorized signatory or point of contact for any active service level agreements, rate negotiations, or compliance verifications. Per Clause 7B of our Standard Master Service Agreement regarding key personnel continuity, please be advised that my departure may trigger an automatic review or suspension of credit terms pending the appointment of a qualified successor. Please direct all future urgent matters to Justin Hamilton, Chief Executive Officer. Best regards, Peter." I read it over. It was dry, factual, and legally bulletproof. Clause 7B was the magic bullet. Years ago, when Valiant was expanding aggressively, our credit rating was shaky. Vendors were nervous about getting paid. To soothe them, Walter Hamilton had me insert a clause into our major contracts. It stated that if the key personnel who held the relationship left the company, the vendor had the right to immediately pause services or demand cash up front until they vetted the new management. It was a trust clause. They trusted me, not the company. Justin did not know about Clause 7B. Justin probably thought a master service agreement was a document about bossing people around. I hit send on the first email, then the second, then the third. I went down the list alphabetically. Allied Trucking Consortium, sent. Bayonne Port Authority, sent. Canadian Border Services Brokerage, sent. I sat there for 20 minutes just hitting send. It was rhythmic, therapeutic, like popping bubble wrap, but every single pop cost Valiant at least $100,000. My phone buzzed. It was Big Joe from the Gulf Coast Shipping Union. "Pete, what the hell is this email?" His voice rumbled, sounding like gravel in a blender. "I just got a bounce back from your work address saying user unknown." "I am out, Joe," I said, leaning back in my seat. "Justin let me go this morning. Culture fit." Joe laughed, a barking sound. "Does he know the ink is not even dry on the shipping renewal we talked about on Tuesday?" "He does not seem to think it matters, Joe. He thinks the software handles it." "Software does not buy me a beer when my guys are working Christmas," Joe grumbled. "So, who is handling the dispatch for the chemical shipment tonight? That stuff is volatile. If my guys do not have the hazmat clearance codes signed by a certified officer, the trucks do not roll. That would be Justin, I said, or maybe Tiffany. She vibrates on a high frequency, Joe. I am sure she can vibrate the hazmat paperwork through. Joe snorted. I am not risking my guys. If you are not signing off, the trucks do not roll. Clause 7B, right? Clause 7B, I confirmed. Strict adherence to safety protocols. You got it, Pete. Trucks are parking. Enjoy your day off. The line went dead. I smiled, one domino down. I started the car and drove out of the lot. As I turned onto the main road, I passed a line of Valiant trucks heading inbound. The drivers had no idea that in about an hour their fuel cards were going to get declined because the fleet management vendor, Ted from FleetCor, whom I sent a holiday card to every single year, was about to read my email. I did not go home. I drove to the depot, a greasy spoon diner about 3 miles away. It was a trucker joint with vinyl booths patched with duct tape, coffee that tasted like battery acid, and a waitress named Brenda who knew me. Coffee, honey? Brenda asked. Keep the pot, Brenda, I said. I set up my laptop on the sticky table. My phone started buzzing incessantly. Incoming call, Swift Logistics. Incoming call, Newark Customs Broker. Incoming call, Justin Hamilton. I stared at Justin's name dancing on the screen. I let it ring. He called again immediately. I let it ring again. I took a sip of the battery acid coffee. It tasted like freedom. I opened a new tab on my browser. I looked at the clock. It was 10:45 in the morning. At 11 o'clock, the daily cross-dock status meeting was scheduled to happen. Usually, I ran it. I would tell the warehouse managers which trucks were late, which bays were open, and which orders were priority. Today, Tiffany would be running it. I imagined Tiffany standing in front of a room full of grizzled warehouse foremen holding her clipboard, trying to explain why half the inbound fleet was parked on the side of the highway and why the customs brokers were demanding to speak to a Peter. Sorry, guys, I whispered to the empty diner booth. The frequency is about to get real low. Then a text message popped up, not from a vendor, but from Sarah, the payroll manager. She was a good egg, quiet, religious, baked excellent brownies. She wrote, Peter, oh my God, are you gone? Justin is screaming in the hallway. He says you sabotaged the server. He cannot access the vendor portal. I chuckled. I did not sabotage anything. I just had the two-factor authentication code sent to my personal cell phone because the cheap IT firm we outsourced to had set it up that way 5 years ago and never changed it. I texted back. I did not touch the server, Sarah. But tell him the two-factor authentication code expires in 60 seconds. He might want to hurry. I did not send him the code. I just took a bite of my toast. The war had begun, and I had the high ground. On my laptop screen, red dots were clustering outside of Chicago, our Midwest distribution hub. A dot meant a truck had been idling for more than 30 minutes. The yard gates required new codes weekly, which I usually texted to drivers on Monday mornings. Today was Tuesday, and I had not reset them before walking out. Justin probably did not even know the gates had security codes, likely assuming they opened by the sheer force of his charisma. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not recognize, but the area code was New York. Mr. Brooks, it read. This is Davidson, legal counsel for Atlantic Heavy Haul. Our trucks are locked out of the Valiant Yard in New Jersey. Your office is unresponsive. Are we in breach or are you? I typed back, Mr. Davidson, I am no longer with Valiant. Please refer to Clause 7B. I cannot authorize entry. Good luck. 3 minutes later, another red dot appeared on the map in New Jersey. The system was freezing. It was a safety mechanism. The vendors were protecting themselves because the guarantor of their safety, me, was gone. At 12:30, Tiffany called. Peter, she shrieked, you have to give us the passwords. The drivers are calling the police. They are stuck at the gates. Tiffany, I said, I do not have the passwords. They are on the server. We cannot get in, she screamed. It keeps asking for codes sent to your phone. That is the two-factor authentication security protocol, I explained. Well, give me the code, she screamed. I cannot, I replied. Sharing credentials with unauthorized personnel violates the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I could go to jail. But Justin says you are holding the company hostage, she cried. Justin fired me, Tiffany. My clearance is revoked. If I give you the code, I am hacking. I refuse to break the law for a company that just discarded me. I am putting you on speaker, she hissed. Peter, it was Justin, his voice tight with panic. Give us the code or I am suing you for sabotage. Justin, I said, you fired me. Surely your agile leadership team can reset a password. We called them, Justin exploded. They said only the account admin can authorize it. That is you. Sounds like a flaw in your organization chart, I said. We have 520 tons of frozen seafood sitting in Miami, Justin yelled. It will rot. That is tricky, I replied. Did you renew the fuel cards? They expired yesterday. I usually do that manually because the system glitches. I heard a thud. Fix it, Peter. Come back and maybe we won't sue. Are you offering my job back? I asked. I am offering you a chance not to be destroyed, he yelled. No thanks, I said. I am busy cleaning my apartment. Very important for the vibes. I hung up. I looked at the map. More red dots. A cluster in Miami now. I felt a twinge of guilt. Not for Justin, but for the drivers. The drivers were the innocent pawns here. I opened my contacts, found the number for Miami Gary, the cold storage facility foreman. Gary, it is Peter, I texted. I am out. The kid is driving the bus off a cliff. The fuel cards are going to bounce. Don't let the drivers sit there. Tell them to decouple and hook up to the shore power at your yard. Charge it to the emergency contingency account I set up 4 years ago. It is pre-funded. Gary texted back instantly. Roger that, Peter. We got you. Screw the kid. We will save the shrimp, but we are not releasing the trucks until you say so. I smiled. The drivers were safe, and Justin was screwed. I closed the laptop. I needed to be proactive. I thought about who stood to gain the most from Valiant's collapse. Vanguard Strategic Logistics, our biggest rival. Their regional vice president, Silas Thorne, had been trying to hire me for a decade. I picked up my phone and dialed Silas's number. He answered on the second ring. Peter Brooks' smooth baritone voice purred. What do I owe the pleasure? Did you finally get tired of saving Valiant for peanuts? I am free, Silas, I said. Free? Fired this morning, I replied. There was a thoughtful pause. Where are you? Silas asked. At the depot on Route 12. Stay there, Silas said. I am sending a car. We will have lunch and talk about the future. Silas, I said, I am not coming alone. I am bringing the Port of Los Angeles, the Gulf Coast Shipping Union, and the Canadian Border Control with me. I could hear him smiling through the line. I will send the car, he said. A black luxury sedan pulled up to the diner, sticking out like a diamond in a pile of coal. The driver, a large man who looked like he doubled as a bouncer, opened the door for me. I grabbed my beat-up bag and my laptop. Brenda, the waitress behind the counter, whistled. Moving up in the world, Peter? She asked. Just a different kind of ride, Brenda, I said. I slid into the back seat. It smelled of new leather and money. As we glided onto the highway heading toward the business district, I checked the news. The industry blogs were lighting up. Valiant Systems was reporting a major IT outage with ports gridlocked. My phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. Peter, it is a bloodbath here. Walter Hamilton just landed his private jet. He is at the headquarters, and he is furious. He found out about the shipping blockade. He is looking for you. I texted back, tell him I am having lunch. I met Silas Thorne at an upscale restaurant downtown. He looked like a businessman who calculated profit margins in real time. Perfectly tailored suit, gray temples, eyes that measured value instantly. Peter, Silas stood and shook my hand. You look energized. I look like a man who has been freed. Silas, I said, let us cut to the chase. You know what is happening. I do. Silas nodded. Our dispatchers are reporting a massive uptick in spot market requests. Valiant's loads are being dumped, rates are skyrocketing, and Justin is panicking. He is trying to cover the loads, but he does not have the drivers because they are parking. Why are the drivers parking? They know that without me, their checks might bounce, way station tickets won't get paid, and customs won't clear, I said. I did not tell them to stop, I just told them I was not there to protect them. Self-preservation did the rest. Silas leaned in. So what do you want? A vice president title? Autonomy? We can match your salary and add 30%. I want absolute control over the strategic accounts division, I said. I bring my book of business, my vendors, my contacts, and my trust. I run it my way. Silas smiled. Deal, he said. While we were waiting for our steaks, my phone buzzed with an alert from the Department of Transportation. Valiant vehicle number 5210 was involved in a multi-car accident on Interstate 80. A massive chemical spill. My stomach dropped. I called Big Joe immediately. Joe, I saw the alert. Was it one of ours? I asked. Yes, Joe sounded shaken, but it was not my union drivers. It was a scab driver Justin hired off a digital board to move the chemical load because we refused. The driver did not have the hazmat endorsement, Pete. He jackknifed and leaked solvent all over the highway. The Environmental Protection Agency is on site. This is a federal investigation. The Department of Transportation is going to ground the entire Valiant fleet. I hung up. This was the cost of Justin's arrogance. I looked at Silas. Valiant just killed itself, I said. Safety shutdown. I stood up. Where are you going? Silas asked. I have to go make sure my people do not get dragged down with the ship, I said, and then I have to meet a very angry father on the tarmac. At the airfield, Walter Hamilton was descending from his jet, shouting into his phone. He saw my Explorer and stormed over. You ungrateful Walter, I interrupted. Get in, your driver is not coming because Justin fired the dispatch team. I am the only ride you have. Walter climbed in. Drive, he growled. Explain why my company is worth half of what it was this morning. As we drove, he spat. You destroyed my legacy. No, Walter, I said, I just turned the lights on. You left the kid alone with matches. Justin says you hacked the system. He does not know the difference between a hack and an expired password. I left, and the system followed me. That is gravity. The accident on Interstate 80, Walter said. Is the driver okay? He's alive, I said, but the fines will bankrupt you. The Department of Transportation is issuing a shutdown under 49 U.S.C. Section 5123 and 49 CFR, Part 172. If I fire Justin, will you come back? Walter asked. No, I am joining Vanguard. Walter slumped, then laughed a dry chuckle. Clause 7B, he muttered. I remember when you wrote that. It was insurance, I said, and I cashed it in. I dropped Walter at headquarters, where police were gathering. I drove back to Vanguard, signed my contract, and spent 6 hours calling the Port of Los Angeles, the trucking consortiums, and the customs brokers. By 8 in the evening, I had moved 60% of Valiant's volume. Later, Sarah texted me. Walter fired Justin. He was crying. But Justin had sent a company-wide email accusing me of sabotage. The idiot accidentally attached Tiffany's budget instead of his evidence. The spreadsheet showed he had been embezzling millions from the pension fund. I forwarded it to Charles Banks, Valiant's general counsel, citing 18 U.S.C. Section 664. 10 minutes later, the police arrested Justin at a local bar. The next day, Walter called. Justin is in jail, and the pension accounts are frozen. If the pension is gone, the drivers have nothing. Help me. I wanted to destroy Justin, but not the drivers. I told Silas we are buying Valiant's assets for $1. We take the fleet, the warehouses, and the entire pension liability. Silas balked. That is sentimental, Peter. It is great business, I replied. We get loyal drivers who know we saved their retirement. Silas calculated. Fine, he said. Draft it. 3 weeks later, my new office at Vanguard overlooks the harbor. Justin is awaiting trial, and Tiffany is launching a podcast. The drivers kept their pensions, and Walter retired to Italy. I sat looking at the digital dashboard. My assistant James walked in with mail. I found a letter from Justin. You think you won, Peter. You are just a cog. I looked at the ship's loading containers, smiled, and shredded it. The machine was humming, and I was holding the wrench. Let us move some freight, I said.